So, hello, I'm at Wonderland Blog and I'm also at Makie Lab, which is the company I started a year ago. And it's a toys and games company, blended. And there's a lot of time that people are like, well, toys or games or toys, or which one? Because historically, toys were often made from games and games were made from toys, but pretty rare that they're made together. And the reason that we're making them together is because finally we can. So this all came together in about 2010. I was out in the New York Toy Fair for the first time because my background is in digital media, basically. So I've been building websites and games and mobile apps and stuff like that since '95. And my focus was games and stuff for kids and teens. And one of the conferences that I go to every year is, well, as much as I can, keeps changing its name. It was called the Virtual Goods Conference, and then it was Engage Expo, and now it's Digital Kids. But in 2010, they co-located it with the US Toy Fair. And I'd never been there. And it's huge, it's completely vast. And we were downstairs with the digital stuff, as you do, in the basement at the back. And there was like Michael Acton-Smith talking about Moshi Monsters, and there's a guy talking about Club Penguin, so that kind of thing, where they're talking about millions and millions of kids and teens, millions and millions of users and games and play, and hours in front of the screen. And then upstairs was all the toys. And there was this brilliant moment where there was this kind of line of people at the back, somewhat older than the people who were on stage. And I think Michael or somebody had finished, and somebody put their hand up and they said, "Don't you just want kids to go outside and play with a hoop and stick?" And it was one of those things where these two industries are just smashing together. And short answer to me for that was, well, why not both? You know, do they have to be mutually exclusive? This is crazy, we're talking about play. And so I went upstairs to the toy fair and did the whole thing. And it's like, I don't know how many thousands of square feet, but massive. No sign of Facebook, no sign of Twitter, a couple of nods to some games, but basically just product. So again, it was like, wow, this is divided. At the same time, I'm married to Corey, and this was a book, one of his books that I just finished, and we'd been talking about this kind of stuff for ages, right? So Corey writes science fiction. He writes science fiction about the now, so stuff that's kind of is happening or is about to happen. And we'd been talking a while about what was then called fabbing, this kind of movement to self-fabricate or make stuff at home or in the office using kind of hacked together hardware. So we'd been talking about 3D printing. A really long time ago, 1999, I made this little thing called Store Troopers, which was a little drag and drop avatar system where you could kind of make yourself. And, you know, early days for that stuff, and kind of immediately Weemies, but it happened at the same time as all of those. Store Troopers was this funny thing. We had the business model at the time was we wanted to sell licenses to the software to media corporations. So we sold a license to Warner Brothers for Harry Potter and stuff like that. But what actually happened in practice was that was very slow business, and we put this up as a demo, and we had 1 million people turn up overnight, which in '99 was a lot. And half of them from Brazil, so there's still like loads of Brazilians of them. And so everyone turned up and made an avatar, and what they did was they made themselves, and then they made all their friends, and they made their family, and they emailed them around to each other, and we'd done it so that you had to email it through our service, so we could see all of this stuff happening. And anyway, so I came back from Toy Fair, and I was like, I wonder if you could do Store Troopers with 3D printing, because, you know, downstairs we have avatars and upstairs we have dolls and action figures, and downstairs we have car racing games and upstairs we have cars, but can we do that? So I was just going to nip out and just quickly show you 3D printing in case you haven't seen it. There's two types. There's a powder-based laser sintering type, and then there's a extruded type called FDM. It's all acronym CITY, but effectively you either laser plastic powder or you squirt it out of a nozzle. We're using the lasering version at the moment, but where's the play button gone? Replay. This is how it works. So it sort of looks like a printer, hence 3D printing. You'll sometimes see it called additive manufacturing, but it's you know, that's how it works. It layers powder, a little laser goes zzz, and melts the plastic at 100 micron layers in our case, into an object, and then you dig through the powder and like archaeology, and way, there's a thing. 3D printing. So, which one was I? That one. So at the same sort of time, this is one of my World of Warcraft guilds. I'm a big gamer, always have been, hence the interest in making games and stuff. There's always one, and that's me there, this one. We had a party and there was a skinny dipping, as you do. Anyway, so at the time, this company started up called Fingerprints, and what Fingerprints was offering was a 3D printed statue of your World of Warcraft character. So they'd pull the data out of World of Warcraft from what's called the Armory and print it. And this is one of those laser sintered things. So I was like, this is, people are beginning to look into this stuff. Now, the full colored version, you'll see a lot of this type of printed product. It's a specific machine called Z-Corp. It's the only one that does full color. It's incredibly fragile because it's basically made out of cornstarch squirted with ink and then soaked in super glue. So you can't use it for toys, but you can use it for statues. It was really interesting to see how after spending 100 days and 36 hours and 7 minutes in World of Warcraft, you really want something to show for it. So this is kind of going everywhere. This is somebody's island in Minecraft. There's a thing called Mineways now where you can just shove your Minecraft world through and they'll spit out the correct file to go through a 3D printer. And it goes from that sort of sublime to the completely mundane. So this one is a screenshot from Deus Ex, and some guy spotted that Jensen has a candelabra in his apartment and decided to make it for 3D printing. So that's Jensen's 3D printed candelabra with a can of bloke coke next to it. Mandelabra. You can go onto a place called Thingiverse, which is a site that houses free and open 3D models, and download that and then send it off to the printer and print it if you so wish. So back to the idea. Virtual goods and virtual worlds pretty much started with Habbo. They came into they exploded with Zynga and co. But Habbo Hotel is 11 years old, maybe. It's definitely the biggest teen digital hangout still on the web, partially because it's been going for so long. And the way it works is you have a little digital character, and then you have a room, and you can buy stuff to put in your room. And it's all digital, so I don't know how much those little gold blocks cost, but let's say they're $1. That person has spent a lot to create the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. And then, this year, it's taken that long, which is pretty amazing. So hopefully we're not too early. But this year, Farmville have just signed a deal with Hasbro. This is the classic model of toy making. So going back to the digital goods, Farmville, Zynga's been selling digital goods, Now they're into physical goods. They've done a deal with Hasbro to make plush versions of your cow or your tractor or whatever. At the moment, it doesn't seem more interesting than that. A quick thing on the toy industry, and the reason we've decided that we can do this, it's a fascinating business. The Toy Story book that you saw at the beginning is pretty worth a read. It's a kind of 3-decade history of the European and US toy industries, and what happened was we had huge thriving toy design industries that were effectively a sum of mergers and acquisitions and then a wholesale move pretty much to the Far East. So in that book he claims that over 95% of the Western world's toys and games are made in the Far East. And so the way the process works is you have an idea, especially if it's digital, you have to wait until it's big enough for the toy companies to want to get involved, at which point they do, and then they go over to the east and they make the toy, and it's run through a factory and it's stuck on a ship and it comes back and it sits in a warehouse, and then there's a deal done. They're so huge, they have these existing deals with Toys R Us, and then the marketing is planned and they try to figure out the right number versus the marketing and the warehousing, and then they do that, and that's how it works. So to give you an example, the Monster High dolls, by the way, are the biggest category in the toy industry, single category. The Monster High dolls took 4 years from concept to being on a shelf. So back to our thing. So what Makie Lab is doing is we set out to be disruptive to the toy industry. Again, because I said, you know, the technology has enabled us, as technology does. Not only that, myself and my co-founder Sulka, we both have 4-year-old girls. This is the 5th floor of Hamleys, and it doesn't get better than that. The 5th floor, by the way, is the girls' floor. So they've just relabeled it, I think, literally 4 months ago. But for the past, I don't know how many years, when you went to Hamleys, boys was on 3, girls was on 5. Sod knows what was on 4. Goblins. Computer games were in the basement. And so you go into the girls' floor, and that's the dolls to the right, and you kind of look forward, and it's those make-your-own bracelets and beads things, and the baby dolls at the back, and then you go left, and it's the beauty salon, where you take your 9-year-old to have her hair done and her nails done. So anyway, so I'd been bringing the prototypes home, and my kid was playing with the prototypes and all of the dolls that I'd bought as research, and she picked up one of the well, they're all girls, one of them, and went, "Mummy doll," and it was a big one, and she picked up a little one, Posy doll, and she looked around and she said, "Where's Daddy doll?" Yeah, what's Daddy doll? So I went to Hamleys, and I said, "Have you got any boy dolls?" And they went, "Try the boy floor," because I actually said, "Have you got Action Man?" And Action Man's been discontinued. Went down to the boy floor. Action Man has been replaced with HM Forces. So now, you know, he has to be a soldier. He can't just be kayak dude or scuba man. He has to be kill dude. And he's ugly, and he's just middle-aged kind of TA person. So I was like, no, I don't want that. And they said, well, there's always Ken, but we haven't got Fashionista Ken. Good. We haven't got Fashionista Ken in stock, so how about Justin Bieber? He's on 5, and that was it, right? That was the sum total of the choice for boy dolls. I always feel so sorry for this guy. He looks like he's been caught in the act and doing something really terrible. So we were like, okay, so what can we do with dolls? You know, avatars, dolls and action figures, but it's no better digitally. You know, there's Barbie, there's Bratz, there's Liv, there's American Girl. It's the pink explosion. Now, American Girl is the one where we just went, oh, okay, this is a little bit different. If only that you can go in somewhere and there's a My American Girl. American Girl is a US only company, $450 million a year business now for Mattel, because merged a while ago. And the way it works is what they actually do is they make 40 different dolls. So 40 different molds in China, and they run them all off. And you can customize your doll by going in and saying, I want brown hair and curly brown hair and brown eyes, and then there's 3 to choose from with varying different skin colors. So you sort of get to have a doll that looks like you if you have a potato face. But this idea that people want something that, you know, maybe looks like them, again, going back to the stormtroopers and all the stuff we've seen in avatars, and it just sort of is a repeated thing that seems to be something that people like. But historically, obviously, making one-offs was not actually possible. You could make a one-off prototype, but you can't go to China into a factory and say, make me 10 million different looking dolls, unless you use 3D printing. Meanwhile, doll land, this is a Blythe doll. A Blythe is a 1970s doll made in Japan, remade now and owned by either Mattel or Hasbro. I think it's Hasbro. And she starts at about $150, goes up to about thousands for the collectible ones. Blythe is definitely the most creative of all the dolls, and there's a big tradition in photographing Blythe in awesome places, and that's actually because her eyes look left and right, unlike most dolls, so she can go like that and look interesting as opposed to sort of starey and weird. And so this started up a really strong creative thing around Blythe. There's a brilliant book, if you just Google Blythe, it's like the 3rd result, by a lady called Gina, I think, who just photographed people's customized Blythes, and it's just staggering to see the range of creativity. This is on Etsy, so you go and see, actually, when you say to people, how would you like your doll, you know, this is the sort of range of creativity they get into, as opposed to just the kind of high street fashions that come with the crappy dolls. And they really take it to awesome extremes. This is one of my favorites. We went to the Blythe meetup. It happens this year. There was one in Manchester, and this is where mainly women turn up with armloads of these things and show off what they've done. In this one, they shaved off the lower lip to make the overbite mod. And, you know, for cuteness. And so this lady had just spent ages shaving it off, redone, painted on the freckles, and you get a cute little face. So There's customization, and you know, it just, it's so cool. So we were like, right, dolls. Having gone through this process, I spoke to somebody very senior in the toy industry, and they said, well, you do realise dolls is the hardest thing you could have chosen. Like, yes, we now realise that. But also, but that's good, right? If we could do dolls, we could do cars, we could do dinosaurs, we could do little Warhammer figures, whatever. We could, there's, the easy stuff is going to be good. These are these little dudes, the iPhone cases, or in my case, Android. Now being sold in the Apple Store. So this is really good news for us as well, because it means that this technology is validated. You would assume that Apple wouldn't sell it if it wasn't okay. So that cheered us up a lot as well. So how does it work? You have a 3D model, usually in a .stl file that you can create with Product Engineer and upload it to somewhere like Shapeways. So there are a bunch of these, and they are proliferating. Not just Shapeways, as in there are a bunch of 3D print bureaus, and there are going to be more and more and more. And you upload your thing, and you choose the material you want it printed in, and you hit buy, and they send it back to you. There are the phone cases right there. I would check out Shapeways because it's pretty amazing what's up there at the moment. This is another one, Pinocchio. They do 3D printing and laser cutting, so you can make all sorts of things, furniture, jewelry. Very cool. Very part of that maker culture. So how did it start? So I was, this hasn't come out brilliantly, sorry. I was doodling the sort of idea that I wanted. I went onto Shapeways and found a 3D modeler who made a first pass very, very quickly, actually. I think it took him about a week. And then we jointed it extremely badly, stuck some wires in and printed it. So this one was kind of yay big. We wanted to see if we could print the whole thing in place, because that was interesting. You know, dolls are usually assembled. I actually learned the word now, and now I've forgotten it again, for the word that is fear of dolls. So I apologise to anybody who has pediophobia or something like that, because this can often freak people out, especially when the eyes are missing. Anyway, so the joints were obviously badly cut, and it turned out if you print that big at the time, it was, I think, 140 euros. So we were like, well, that's a lot. So we shrank her and tried to design some ball joint models, and that dropped it to 120 euros. And then we carried on working, this is the kind of stiff one, on the joints. We realized that actually we did need assemblable joints, because going back to micro transactional goods, the digital goods, we want this model to walk into a game. We want it to be able to earn things. So here's your model, but you should be able to click out the arms and click on the wings, say. So she's now assemblable, and that also means you can pack it into a nice little space, and by doing so it becomes much cheaper to print. That's kind of sort of how she looks now. We've been mucking around with just putting makeup on it, because it's sort of slightly porous, and stuff sticks to it, so you can just put makeup on it, stick it through the dishwasher, it doesn't come off. This is kind of where the female one is now. The boy one's just having his joints put in, so I haven't got any pictures of him. So this is the stuff that we do not have to do. We don't have to produce molds. Right at the beginning, a bunch of people said, well, why don't you, make the body, don't reinvent that. Why don't you just stick a head on a pre-made body, which you can do, and you can just go and buy something from Alibaba.com that's already made in China, but they're pretty poor. If you wanted your own stuff, a good mold per piece costs about $100,000. So, this is not the sort of thing that people can just jump into with their pocket money, whereas 3D printing is. Chinese translation services, turns out we are dealing with China, because it's the only place that you can buy synthetic hair for dolls. Literally. So until somebody's invented corn proteins and does it locally, and I'm hoping somebody will, maybe we'll have to do it, we are dealing with China. And we had that brilliant thing where I had the long email with somebody about doll wigs, sent them the samples, came back, and they were all human-sized ones. So we've got these giant blue curly wigs now. We don't have to worry about materials, because the materials in 3D printing are very cutting edge. The stuff we're using is a pure bioplastic. It was developed for the bioindustry, so you can eat it. So that whole kind of stuff coming out of China with lead in it, not so much. of a worry. Minimum order quantities, again, when you buy from factories, you usually have to buy a minimum order. With 3D printing stuff, every single print can be unique. So you can just print a one-off of anything. If somebody wants Louboutin shoe X, whatever, and they want to model it, no problem. All that kind of stuff. You can appeal to the very, very tiny little niche bits. And no warehousing, print on demand. So that idea of making a million things and then hoping it sells, and then when it doesn't, you bury it in the Arizona desert, doesn't exist anymore. Stuff we do need for what we're doing, colored plastics, so it's only available in white at the moment, but we're working with the manufacturers to develop skin colors and then fun colors. It'll take a while, but it's just Moore's law, it'll just happen. Same with resolution. Biodegradable plastics are here already, but are still a bit expensive, so when the price comes down, we can make toys that you can feed to the dog. Faster print speed, it's all coming. So that's one version of how you would pack something for efficiency. And this is what we're doing with it. So what we have a bit of technology in the background, quite a large bit, that takes that model, down-reses it for a game, and up-reses it for the print. So that the same model can just walk into a game world and or walk to the printer, which means, like I said, we can build this world where you can play a game, earn stuff, have that stuff, go buy it. Lastly, we want the bit that you buy to not just be, again, still a dumb piece of plastic. So at the moment we're designing what we're calling action dolls, because they've got knees and elbows so they can ride motorbikes. That's the only difference between Barbie and Action Man, is that he can ride a motorbike, she can't. To be hackable, so there's space in the head, and the head fits a LilyPad Arduino. An Arduino is a 60 quid piece of hack your own electronics. So the board would fit in the head, there's a wire that goes through the neck, and then there's a battery compartment in the back. There's the Arduino, which means that you could stuff the action doll full of this kind of thing, Bluetooth, RFIDs, accelerometers, that kind of thing. Bluetooth talks to iPhone 4, so then you can have your doll speak through your phone. And that's what we're basically putting live at the end of April, so it's an alpha. Super alpha. Alpha at the moment is you can make the doll using sliders, and then you can hit buy and take photographs of it, and we will send you one that looks the same. The game stuff and all of the other amazing things are coming later when we've raised more money. And that's it. That's me. Thank
you. Do you worry about piracy?
No. This is where the game bit is important. If it were just a dumb object, maybe. But what we're going to do is Creative Commons the object anyway. And at the end of the day, if somebody wanted to pirate it, they could do one of two things. They could just take that model and print it themselves, which, if we didn't put it out there, they would have to scan it and print it themselves, but you only need one person to scan it, and then it's there anyway. And so we're still sort of working through that one, but I just sort of think that the amount of people who will want to get the model, print it themselves, have it turn up with no eyes, no wig, no connectivity to the services, no painting, no box, no kind of part of that whole environment, is tiny. And if they want to do that, fine, because maybe they want to print it out and hack it. I mean, I sort of think that's cool, hence the Creative Commons idea to put the model out there anyway. So we're trying to treat products as a service, like software as a service. So we say, well, here's the product, but you won't get all the cool stuff unless you come and join our thing. And we're calling it Makies because we really want people to actually get stuck in with making stuff. So we want them to hack it and mod it and then make suggestions and, you know, get into making clothes, and then we reward people for doing the cool stuff. So, yeah, exactly. And piracy, anyway, is usually just a sign that your thing is popular. So actually, we're hoping for it.
Yes.
Kind of follow up on that. You talked about kind of putting on Creative Commons and Thingiverse. Do you think you might then actually accept mods or additional designs from the community
We'd love
back
to.
into your?
We'd love to. You have to watch out for the penis mods. Yeah, we'd love to. So the alpha at the moment for Makies is this idea that there will be a backstage where people can just muck around. Because the thing about avatars and dolls and figures is that effectively they're not a far then step from robots. So there is the idea that this is just a thing that we can start to play with. So we will have to look into that legal stuff of like who owns what when it's made by somebody else, but that's a tiny little thing. And I think it will just continue to be if it's made by the community, then it's a CC thing as well. So yeah, we really want to encourage that, but like I said, we do have to watch out for the penis thing. I remember I met this guy at a Second Life party at GDC a very long time ago when Second Life was about a year old, and I said, what do you do? Because it was at the Second Life party. He goes, oh, I'm one of the community. And I said, oh yeah, cool. And what do you do? And he went, I make money in Second Life. He's like, yeah, that's what most people do. What do you do? Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. And of course, being stupid, I was like, really? What is it? What is it? He goes, I make vending machines. Really? What do you sell? Genitals. $15,000 a month he was making.
Okay, next question. Anyone? Okay, I've got a question. When I was kind of doing my automotive design masters, I kind of got some wheels rapid prototyped, and I had to get them rapid prototyped in China because there was nobody in the UK who could do it cost effectively. Like, how are you kind of looking to do kind of UK-based production, or are you having to do that overseas?
No, we're doing it all we're doing it half in London at the moment.
Amazing.
So we've got a printer on Wimpole Street called Digits to Widgets. Check him out, he's lovely, a man called Jonathan. And we're using 3T RPD, who are out in Newbury. We did use Shapeways for prototyping, but they're in Eindhoven, so it would come over with a bit of, you'd have to wait for it to come over, whereas Jonathan in Wimpole Street can turn something around in kind of less than 48 hours. Prices have come down. Prices came down 20% in this year, duration of this whole project anyway. If you have a look at Shapeways for a sort of idea of how much stuff costs, it depends on the material. So the nylon is the cheapest stuff, and stainless steel and silver and the metal titanium are the most expensive. So yes, you can have a titanium robot if you've got the money. But and it's done by weight and volume and possibly size. So hence the packing thing is kind of critical. So when we packed the same doll that at the time was 120 and packed her in like that, it went down to 70. So it's that kind of, you just keep sort of going back and forth to work it out. But if you want to print something sort of that big in plastic, it's going to cost you about £5.
Yeah. And do you ever see yourself getting to the point where you'll be doing kind of in-market production, so you're kind of cutting out sort of the international shipping from the UK out to market?
So our business plan is that we open a small creative workshop next to 3D printing hubs, so that the digital HQ is in London and Helsinki, and this is where we're doing all the code, but we'll open a small office in the States nearest, Shapeways is in New York, say, and MakerBot is in New York, near to them, which would be packaging and painting and bewigging or adding wheels, whatever the toy is, which means that the toy would be made at least in the continent where the customer is, if not even the country soon. So this is the faster that the bureau proliferate, the better, because they're basically a distributed manufacturing network. They're one factory across the world, which is just brilliant.
That's awesome.
And because they all use the same machines, once you've got your print recipe, you just go, this is what we're doing, this resolution, this material, and it's the same thing. Yeah. So your QA is like, you've got minor QA, but nothing like sort of dialing up a whole new factory in Vietnam or whatever.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great. What's the vision for the game side of things?
So in terms of the way we're working at the moment, the 4 founders are all games people. So we were like, we need to prove out the manufacturing side first, because you don't want to build a game and then go, oh shit, can't do that. Necessarily. And we wanted to rapidly iterate both the physical and the digital. So the game stuff, I mean, there's sort of less I can say because it's more likely to change. But with Makie's itself, the focus is going to be more on playful tools. So hack and mod, the shape, the clothes, that kind of stuff. And maybe some small social games like, I don't know, draw something for clothes or that kind of thing. And then with kids, we still need to take the whole thing through toy safety testing, global toy safety testing. So the US and the EU, Japan and China have different standards for that. Once that's been done, and that again is just a matter of a little bit of time, a little bit of money, we can go for kids, and I would expect that what we'll build for kids is more of a world to explore. So, but that's probably all I'll say at the moment, because frankly, anything can happen. What will definitely stay the same is that whatever happens in the world is likely to be 3D, and the objects will all be 3D print ready. So whether it's a thing on your body or that crate and barrel, you can turn them into toys and play with them.
You're not planning on producing
doing
in-house?
the actual printing? At some point, maybe, but it's while the machines are neat and tidy, the bit at the end you saw with the powder, that's pretty messy. And if you go and visit a 3D print manufacturer, 3D print supplier, they're all in overalls with great big extractor fans. I mean, it is still manufacturing. It is still a factory. That said, I mean, there will probably come a point, you know, if you have massive ambition, you think ahead, there is a point where it does make sense, the machines come down. One really interesting thing about SLS is the machines that we're printing on cost £125,000 minimum each, but there's a printer coming out called blueprinter.dk, which is instead of selective laser sintering, is selective thermal heat sintering. They claim that it's exactly the same heated thing at the same layers, and that machine is €9,000. So there's this sort of extraordinary drop in costs, basically because a bunch of patents expired a year and a bit ago, which means that everything will get cheaper faster. So maybe the stuff will be brought in-house faster than we would think.
So the game is about the dolls, as opposed to being a game where the dolls are just kind of, I guess, a secondary factor, perhaps.
I guess it depends how much you think an avatar is secondary to the game. So that will depend. I mean, at the end of the day, that's a game design choice. The question I get asked a lot is, well, are you going to do this for other people who already have characters for their models? And the short answer is you can produce like figure prints, you can produce statues immediately from game models. But anything that is a toy with movable parts and engineering is a different thing again, so that has to be designed from scratch. So the short answer there would be maybe, but it's not the primary focus.
So you mentioned robots a couple of times. Is that a direction in which Makie Lab might go?
Yes. Yeah. Again, the technology is enabling everybody. So robotic stuff, the kits for having a joint move are now super cheap, and again, Arduino stuff. So it's a case of we will because we can and we want to. So yeah, I mean, Makie Lab is full of nerds who love robots. So it's a kind of inevitability. I really want to skip to the bit very quickly where somebody comes back and goes, look what I did, and they've stuck an Arduino in and recorded a voice and had it do something, and that moment of, oh God, they are alive. Yeah.